Welcome to this special financial crisis edition of the Situation Update. I'm Mike Adams in the Brighteon.com studios. This is for Thursday, March 16th, 2023. Appreciate you joining me. We've got one heck of an incredible lineup for you today. We've got two interviews scheduled ahead. They are with Sarah Westall and also Gregory Mannarino. And I'm expecting especially the Mannarino interview to be a bombshell on the financial information. And Sarah Westall, of course, a champion of liberty and free speech. If both of those interviews actually happen, because there's all kinds of glitches and things are breaking down all the time. But if they happen, they'll be in today's podcast or broadcast as it has become now with the video. So stay tuned for that. All that's coming up. The crisis happening right now is the imminent collapse of Credit Suisse, which is, let's face it, that's the World Economic Forum globalist bank of Switzerland. It's not the central bank, but it's so large that it is too big to fail. And you've heard the phrase too big to fail, where they bail out those banks using government money, massive money printing. Credit Suisse has more than $1.3 trillion in deposits, and a last-ditch effort to save the bank was proposed to the Saudis, and the Saudis said, no, we're not going to dump more money down this corrupt black hole. And so Credit Suisse is on the verge of collapse. It may collapse by the time you even see this video. If not, expect an imminent collapse over the next, 24, 48, 72 hours. If it survives to this weekend, it'll be a miracle. If it survives in the next week, a miracle. But Credit Suisse is on the verge of collapse. And what's going to happen from there will cascade across U.S. banks, which are already extremely fragile following the collapse of 3 U.S. banks last week. And what I'm going to cover here today in today's broadcast is the fact that it looks like the entire Western financial system is going to be annihilated. Not tomorrow, not in 1 week, not even in 1 month, but we are now in the opening segments of the final chapter. Let's say if we're reading the book of the self-annihilation of Western finance, we're in the last chapter, but we're reading the first few paragraphs, and they go something like, oh, first 3 banks collapsed, and then the woke regulators bailed them out by printing money. And, here we go. And then Credit Suisse collapsed. And then there was Contagion that spread. It took some time. It took a few weeks, but there was more contagion. And then the systemically important banks, the SIBs, began to fail. And then the Treasury and the Fed panicked and printed $25 trillion. And injected that into the liquidity of the system. And then a few months later, hyperinflation kicked in and so on. This is the chapter that we're reading right now. And it ends with the annihilation of Western finance and, frankly, the annihilation of the dollar and the United States of America as we know it. So that's what we're going to be covering here today. I've got some breaking news headlines to go to in a second. But let me shift gears for a minute. I want to talk about lead in superfoods and supplements because we've been doing some testing and I've got some results to share with you that I think you're going to find rather shocking. Now, you know how I say that we do lab testing at healthrangerstore.com. We test for heavy metals, we test for glyphosate, we test for E. coli and salmonella, total plate count, yeast and mold, aflatoxins, and we're adding dioxin testing in the coming months. We are an ISO accredited laboratory, 17025. We are inspected and audited, and we pass proficiency tests every year. That's required. We're audited on site every year. We have an operations manual that's so thick, it's insane. Had to buy an extra large 3-ring binder just to have it. We test raw materials to make sure that you don't get polluted food or polluted superfoods or supplements. So to show you what we're talking about, we went on to Amazon.com and we bought these Moringa products that you see over here. I'm going to go through them here in a second. All these different brands, different company names, different Moringa products. And then we tested them all for heavy metals, including lead. And we have all the results to share with you. I'm going to show you just a couple of results. Let me grab this mic. All right, let me show you just a couple of results that are going to blow your mind. So here we have this Moringa product from, what is this, Herbs Botanica. And the lead that we found in this is 2,311.9 parts per billion. In other words, that's 2.3 parts per million, folks. Go look at Prop 65, and you'll find that these numbers are for food, or superfood. It's pretty wild. And then, here's one, organic moringa leaf powder. And remember how I've said that organic doesn't mean that it's free from heavy metals? Remember that? Well, whatever brand this is, what is that, Yasa or something? It's organic, yes, I believe that. But then if you look at the lead level, look at that, 1,918 parts per billion. Now, if you join the naturalnews.com newsletter, which is free, we will send you we're going to send you a PDF with all the lead levels of all these products so you can have all of them. For today in the studio, I'm just talking about, these that kind of stand out as really high. But here's our product, Health Ranger Select, organic moringa, certified organic, lab tested. How much lead is in this product? Now remember, here we had 2,312 rounded parts per billion over here. And again, what was this? 1,918 parts per billion. How much is in Health Ranger Select? Here's the answer, 28. 28 parts per billion, 28.2 to be exact. And anybody can confirm this. So we're talking orders of magnitude difference. If you want to avoid lead and have clean food, you want lab-tested products. Moringa is just one example of many. But I had to show you this. I mean, look at the difference between 28 versus 1,900 and 2,300. This is almost 100 times higher than our product. Think about that. So, folks, when I say that we conduct lab testing and that we reject up to 80% of the raw materials lots, I'm not kidding. We get stuff in, we get moringa, we get turmeric, we get maca, ginger, those can be high in lead, so we reject the high lead lots. And then we test lentils and oats for glyphosate. We test almost everything for glyphosate, but we see glyphosate in lentils and oats and different kinds of crops, legumes, and we reject that. So if you want to avoid lead, cadmium, arsenic, mercury, glyphosate, E. coli, aflatoxins, because we test all the nuts and seeds for aflatoxins, shop at healthrangerstore.com. It's no joke. We do the testing. We have the cleanest, most heavily scrutinized products in the world. And we make them available to, I think, very satisfied people who want clean food, clean supplements, clean personal care products, non-GMO, certified organic, no artificial toxic fragrances, no crazy, insane synthetic preservatives, things like that. No garbage ingredients, no fillers, nothing like that. healthrangerstore.com. So there you go. And if you want the full report on moringa, by the way, just subscribe to the naturalnews.com email newsletter. It's free. We're going to send out that PDF to the entire subscription list pretty soon. We'll give you the numbers on all the brands. And anybody can verify this. Anybody who has a lab, including the companies that we name here, your products. If you're wondering, whoa, you didn't know your products had that much lead in them? Yeah, because you don't test your products. That's why you don't know. Yeah, maybe you should start testing your products. Ever thought about that? No, of course not. Because nobody does in the industry, except us, it seems. Nobody does any testing. Trust me, I hear it all the time. I get complaints from raw materials providers that say, why do you want to test our raw materials? Because we're in the business of offering clean food and clean supplements and superfoods. So of course we're going to test them. We've had, I think, 3 vendors now that have said, we won't sell to you because you do testing. So guess where those vendors will gladly sell their polluted, contaminated products loaded with high lead? To other brands that are sold on Amazon.com that don't do testing, that everybody's buying and eating and getting, lead consumption 100 times higher. Seriously. The state of the industry is pretty disgusting. And lead is getting higher. We've noticed this trend over time. For whatever reason, there's more industrial pollution. There's more lead falling out of the sky. Maybe it's the chemtrails. Maybe it's the train wrecks. Maybe it's the industrial disasters and all the fires. Who knows? There's more lead. We're seeing glyphosate. We're seeing aflatoxins from time to time. And we're going to see a ton of dioxins. I already know that. So I'm at the point, I won't touch any supplements, superfoods, unless I test it in my own lab, because I've seen the contamination firsthand. And I've seen the disgusting lack of ethics in the natural products industry, where people don't test, and they'll claim they're clean, and they'll claim they're certified organic. And sometimes that is all counterfeit certificates as well, especially the stuff coming out of China. So there you go. That's my rant, but it's all true. And if any lawyers from any of those companies want to contact us, go for it. Do your testing first, and you'll find that we're accurate. And you want to send us a lawsuit, we'll throw it in the round file. You can go pound sand, because we are an ISO accredited laboratory. Maybe you should test your own products and stop threatening those of us who are actually doing the testing for the public good, huh? Maybe you should do that. So go pound sand. All right, let's move ahead with the financial situation that is also crashing. You know, it's not just that you're eating lead. I would imagine there's going to be a lot of Wall Street people that are eating lead in a different way soon, by putting a 9 to their temple, because, or maybe they're going to take, leaps off tall buildings and things like that, because their world is collapsing. Not that I'm wishing that upon anybody, but this is where we are. We are in a real crisis, and the situation is only getting worse. So from Breitbart.com, Credit Suisse shares crash as banking crisis goes global. The shares crashed 60% last week. Let's see what it says today. Oh, then another 20% on Wednesday, after its biggest shareholder said it would absolutely not provide additional support. So the shares have hit an all-time low. They're not going to bail out, basically, Credit Suisse. And then Credit Suisse is headed for a total collapse. So I have this from two different sources that Credit Suisse is going to collapse. In fact, that internally, by the numbers, it has already collapsed. It's just that it takes a little while for this to kind of wiggle through the system to where they have to admit it. So they can delay, they can paper over a few things. They have to give their executives time to get money out, obviously, right? They're sending out wire transfers, just like Silicon Valley Bank. They have to pay bonuses to their fraudulent employees. They have to wire money to some other bank before their bank collapses, right? So that's what's happening right now. There's a last minute emergency looting going on, a pillaging of Credit Suisse that's taking place right now, and the pillaging has commenced. So 1.3 roughly, I've heard different numbers, but it's 1.3 trillion. It might be 1.2, it might be 1.4, but over $1 trillion is at risk with Credit Suisse. So check this out. The contagion risk is massive. From the UK Daily Mail here, Treasury probes U.S. banks' exposure to Credit Suisse as it pleads for help from Swiss State Bank. Okay, so let me explain what's happening here. Credit Suisse is asking for a bailout from the central bank of Switzerland. The central bank is probably not big enough to bail out Credit Suisse. Again, too big to bail. If they print that much money in order to bail out the bank, they will collapse their own currency and their own economy. And they already know that. So we have crossed the Rubicon here, where we've gone from too big to fail to now too big to bail. And the question is, will the EU step in? Will the EU try to save Credit Suisse? Well, the US Treasury is already highly concerned about the contagion risk and what's going to happen to US banks as this contagion spreads. So look at this. Well, actually, let me bring in this headline from yesterday. Assets of U.S. banks are worth a massive $2 trillion less than their accounts report. Okay, so right now, the unrealized losses of it's basically mortgage secured bonds and treasury bonds that are held by U.S. banks. The unrealized losses are at $2 trillion. The entire U.S. banking system is incredibly fragile, on the verge of collapse. It would have collapsed this week if not for the intervention, the massive liquidity injection of the FDIC and the Treasury announced by Janet Yellen on Sunday. So even before the collapse of Credit Suisse, U.S. banks are $2 trillion in the hole. 200 banks could fail, basically, is what they're saying here. 200 banks could fail if people asked for their money back. 200 banks, that's what they're saying. A run on the banks, which is just people taking their money out, would leave customers at nearly 200 institutions facing losses of up to $300 billion. So you understand, when the FDIC and the Fed and the White House, when they say, everybody stay calm, don't take your money out, it will all be okay. What they're really saying is your money is safe as long as you never need it, right? That's what they're saying. Your money's safe as long as you don't take it out. Your money's safe as long as your neighbors don't take it out, as long as no one else takes it out. Like, your money's fine, just don't ever ask for it. If you ask for it, you might cause a bank run, for God's sake. Senator Mark Kelly, the fascist astronaut, which would be, I guess, a fastronaut, he wants to censor people who talk about bank runs online in order to stop bank runs. Now, he doesn't want to stop the money printing that's causing the collapse of the dollar and the ultimate hyperinflation. He doesn't want to stop the banking fraud. No, of course not, because, he's in the club. The George Carlin club, the club that you and I are not in. Oh, he's in the club. The fastronaut is in the club. But he wants to silence you and I from talking about this, because if we talk about it and we look at the numbers and we know that there's $2 trillion missing from the banking system, every rational person would take everything out while they can, right? I mean, it's the only rational response. If you know the system's bankrupt, you know it's going to crater, you have to get your deposits out while you still can. Maybe before Credit Suisse collapses and has another contagion tidal wave of bank failures across the United States, you need to get your money out of these systems that are fragile and get it into things that are hard assets. What are those things? I mean, the same things we've talked about, 1,000 times. You know what they are. I don't even have to mention them. From the UK Daily Mail, check this out. Concerns about Credit Suisse's stability rocked European markets, and the European Central Bank contacted other banks on its watch to quiz them about their exposures to the Swiss banking giant. Do you know why they're asking about your bank's exposure to Credit Suisse? Because Credit Suisse is going to fail. And when it fails, you have all this cross-exposure risk between banks, also known as counterparty risk. So Credit Suisse owes money to other banks on different types of instruments, debt instruments, interest rate instruments, bonds, and so on, loans, whatever, that were bought and sold and traded between the banks. Credit Suisse will be a counterparty that is unable to fulfill its half of every trade. And so every bank that did business with Credit Suisse is going to have a giant gaping hole in its balance sheet. And as that hole is realized, then that $2 trillion shortfall that I just mentioned is going to balloon to 10 trillion, maybe? Nobody knows exactly. But there's 300 trillion in derivatives out there just in the US banking system, not to even consider the European banking system. You combine the US and the European banking system, you might be looking at $500 trillion in derivatives exposure, which is between banks and other financial institutions and big investors, institutional investors, and so on. When the giant gaping holes of trillions of dollars in losses begin to emerge in this system, it becomes a domino effect of failure after failure after failure. And any government that tries to print enough money to bail out this system, they're going to end up having to print probably, ultimately, tens of trillions of dollars. And that will collapse. That'll end the dollar. It'll end the euro. The euro, if they try to print enough to bail this out, the euro is dead. It's done. Western Europe, its economy will be done. Its industry is already practically finished because of the energy crisis there. This banking crisis on top of that will end Western Europe as we know it. And it very well threatens to end Western civilization. It will end the United States banking system eventually, although it will take a little bit longer because the Fed and the Treasury will print trillions upon trillions of dollars to bail out the US banks that have exposure to Credit Suisse. And then this will calm things down temporarily, and then it will cause a spike of massive inflation leading to hyperinflation, which will begin to accelerate this summer and throughout the end of this year and all through next year and the following year and so on. And you know how this ends. It ends in the total collapse of the dollar and the total collapse of the Western financial system. So this is your warning call, your wake-up call to what's about to happen. So prepare accordingly. Now, the wokeism plague, I don't know what you call it, the mass mental illness of wokeism is also part of this. Signature Bank chairman led the Know Your Pronouns seminar. This is reported by Breitbart. Scott Shea is his name. He co-hosted a Know Your Pronouns seminar last October. Employees were lectured on how to properly use pronouns like she and her, or here, or however you pronounce that. So this is just another example of how these banks were focused on being all woke. And for example, Silicon Valley Bank had Lesbian Awareness Day, but they never had Risk Awareness Day. All these banks were all the same. They were focused on their woke cult. That was their top priority. Virtue signaling. You know, they filmed music videos. In fact, let me show you one, because this is insane. So we're showing you one of these videos, no audio from this video. This is from, I think, Signature Bank, and this is all their singing and dancing. They filmed like a music video showing you how woke they were. Let me fast forward. Here they are singing, doing a music video, and these are apparently employees at the bank that are singing here. So they want to be, I don't know, pop stars or something. They ripped off like a Katy Perry song here. And here they are. This is the clown show. This is a total clown. Here's their tolerance lecture and how they welcome everybody, you know, except not risk assessment people. And here they are with, I don't know what, cowboys and Viking horns and whatever. So folks, this is the insanity that these banks have demonstrated. It is a parade of woke clowns, and the woke cult took priority over everything else. They said, who cares about risk? They took a bet that they didn't have to pay attention to risk. They took a bet that they would be bailed out by a woke administration, and they were correct. The woke administration bailed out the woke banks, who were focused only on woke. And so now we have the woke economy taking us to the woke apocalypse. That's where this is going. If you abandon the laws of biology, you get transgenderism. If you abandon the laws of meritocracy, you get, I don't know, equal outcomes, right? If you abandon the laws of science and medicine, you get mRNA jab mandates. If you abandon the laws of finance, you get a woke apocalypse. And that's where we are. So understand that you cannot separate this banking crisis from the woke cult, which is mass mental illness of people who think that men can have babies. And they're just as mentally ill when it comes to numbers, accounting, banking, risk, investments, all of it. They're just as mentally deluded in that area as every other area. And they are in charge. So if you keep your money in woke banks, you are voting for the woke cult. And the woke cult will destroy every last dollar that you have. And they will destroy themselves too, just as they've proven with Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank. They'll destroy themselves, but they'll take you with them. So if you want to, I don't know, not be destroyed by the disease of woke, the woke cult, you know, if you don't want to go down and drink the Kool-Aid with the Jim Jones woke cult, you need to get your money out of the system and get into hard assets. of almost anything would be better than having it in dollars in a woke bank at this point. So keep that in mind. That's the action item to remember from today. Now, coming up, we're going to do a couple of bombshell interviews and maybe some offline reports. We'll see where it goes. But stay tuned. This broadcast continues with some, I think, hard-hitting interviews right here on Brighteon.com. All right, continuing offline, couple of updates. I'm recording this part much later in the evening, around midnight. And a couple of developments that I want to make you aware of. Number one, Credit Suisse. I found that they have about 1.5 trillion in deposits, so it was even more than I thought. Well, the Swiss National Bank has decided to step up with something of a small bailout, $54 billion. I know it's crazy to call it small, but hey, if you have 1.5 trillion in deposits and you're going bankrupt as a bank, then 54 billion doesn't seem like a lot. So this is being reported by CNBC and other financial press, Wall Street Journal as well. 50 billion Swiss francs, which is about $54 billion, is going to be injected into Credit Suisse to try to prevent it from collapsing. This is after the Saudi bank said, no, we won't give you any more because, well, they were already up to 9.9% ownership of Credit Suisse, and the Saudis didn't want to go over 10%, apparently because that would flag a lot more regulatory scrutiny and paperwork and things like that. So no more money from the Saudis, and instead money from the Swiss National Bank. Now, of course, where does the Swiss National Bank get this money? They print it. So money printing in Switzerland is now underway. That's right. Magical monetary theory is hard at work in Europe. And this means that there's going to be more inflation in Europe, already massive inflation due to, of course, energy scarcity and currency problems in the euro and the European Central Bank, ECB, being run by woke idiots, of course. So Europe can expect a lot more inflation. And the real question is this $54 billion enough to save Credit Suisse? And I think the answer is no. No, this is almost a PR stunt to say, we're going to give them $54 billion. And what's they going to buy them? A few more days? Maybe? A couple of days? The outflows from Credit Suisse are massive. Tens of billions of dollars. And it's really questionable whether this bank is going to survive at all. Again, I had heard from two sources that Credit Suisse is already done. And now they're just trying to delay it for as long as possible so they can complete the pillaging and looting of the assets of the bank before they dump all the debt and collapse on the depositors. So that's what I'm hearing. We'll see where this goes. I want to talk about pensions for a second, but first, just adding a note to something I said in the studio earlier about the lead testing for moringa. And I said that if you're a subscriber to the Natural News email newsletter, which is free, and you can, I think most of you listening are already subscribers, but if you're not, you can go to naturalnews.com and just look for the free newsletter subscription link. I think it's on the top right of the website. Just sign up there. We're going to put together a PDF detailed report of the heavy metals results of all the products that we tested for lead, moringa for lead. And we're going to email that out to the entire list sometime next week. We'll email it to you as a PDF, probably a link to a PDF or maybe a PDF attachment, probably a link, I would imagine. But you'll get a PDF file one way or another, and then you'll be able to see all the results in that file. So you don't have to do anything special in order to get that. Just check your email inbox, and it'll arrive sometime next week. And this is what we're going to do with a lot more products. Instead of releasing all the results publicly, because everybody freaks out when you start releasing heavy metals results publicly, we're going to release it to our email list. So if you want to get the numbers and see what's in these products that we're testing, crazy levels of lead or cadmium or mercury or arsenic or whatever else, aluminum, copper, just make sure you're subscribed to the Natural News email newsletter. You get all this for free. And as long as we're on the topic of food and superfoods and nutrition, there was a really great article that came out in Epoch Times
under their health division, I guess. And you know how I drink a lot of bananas. And I've joked before about trying to get bananas during the COVID supply chain collapse and what an adventure that was, and hoarding bananas or being accused of hoarding bananas. Like, what are you feeding monkeys? No, I'm just making smoothies, man. Remember that? Remember that story I told you? It's a totally true story about the guy at the grocery store. He's like, "Are you feeding monkeys?" And I said, "I'm the monkey." And then the guy said, I'll never forget this. He said, "I have a third nipple." And I was like, "What? How did we get there from me having bananas in my shopping cart? Now you're bragging about weird anatomy." I have a third nipple. And to this day, I still wish I would have screamed out, "Show us, show us, show us all." But I didn't. I didn't think of that at the time. Anyway, third nipple guy was teasing me for having bananas. And the Epoch Times has a story, "Bananas, the surprising superfood for fighting cancer and heart disease." A research report published in the International Journal of Cancer. Researchers at the Karolinska Institute in Sweden conducted a 13.4-year study of 61,000 women. Anyway, it found that those who ate at least 4 bananas a week lowered the risk of kidney cancer by 50%. See? Bananas. That's what I'm saying. And importantly, this is what you need to know. The darker the patches on the banana skin, because you know how fresh bananas, they start out yellow, or I guess they start out green, and then they go yellow, and then they go yellow with brown spots, right? And then they taste better, actually. Well, the darker the patches on the banana skin, the better the immune system enhancement. Yes. Here's from the study. Yellow-skinned bananas with dark spots have 8 times the ability to increase white blood cells than green-skinned bananas. And bananas also contain substances that have the potential, writes the Epoch Times, to develop anti-cancer drugs. In other words, the drug companies are studying bananas to try to make anti-cancer drugs they can charge you a fortune for, while not telling you could just go buy bananas. Make sure they ripen a little bit before you eat them, and they're basically like delicious natural chemotherapy in a sense, right? And then they link to a research review published in Frontiers in Oncology. That was in 2021, that found the extracts of banana fruits show prevention and anti-cancer activities for various types of cancer by regulating cell signal conduction pathways. Yes, see? That's what I thought I tasted that in the smoothie. I took a sip. Tastes like cell signal conduction pathways. The botanical chemicals in bananas can be used to develop multi-target drugs for cancer treatment. See what I mean? Or you could just have a delicious smoothie. All right, here's something else. Bananas are rich in magnesium. Magnesium helps reduce the risk of atherosclerosis by lessening the plasma oxidized low-density lipoprotein, also known as bad cholesterol, LDL. They have a lot of potassium, which controls blood pressure and regulates heart rate, you see? The human body is prone to arrhythmias and elevated blood pressure when it lacks potassium. And then in a research report published in the European Heart Journal in 2022 found that the risk of cardiovascular disease was reduced by 13% among those with the highest potassium intake compared to those with lower potassium intake. So I don't know, 13% doesn't sound like a lot in terms of relative risk, but hey, bananas are delicious. Anyway, the story goes on to say, hey, bananas have vitamin B6, and vitamin B6 prevents memory loss, and it talks about how bananas contain tryptophan, which the body converts into serotonin, and it relaxes the body, relieves anxiety, makes people feel joy. I don't know. I don't think the bananas are working lately. I haven't felt a lot of joy watching the financial markets, but maybe I need more bananas to feel true joy. Maybe I'll try that, tell you how that goes. And then it says certain people should not overeat bananas, because they're delicious. Diabetics, obviously, because bananas, especially the ripe ones, can have a lot of natural sugar, obviously. So what do you do about that? Well, try my little recipe, which I commit. I'm going to make the smoothie on camera in the studio. Okay. It's my avocado, banana, whey protein, flaxseed, super mix with turmeric. I'm going to show you how to make that. And you know what's wonderful about this? The healthy fats in the avocados slows down the effective glycemic index of the banana sugars. And then if you add flax seeds in there, same thing. You get the omega-3 oils from the flax, a little bit of flax lignans, some flax fiber, and then you add the whey protein in there, and boom, it's awesome. Whey protein, you get protein, you get fat, you get sugar, and you get all the anti-cancer effects of bananas, which is always nice. And then the turmeric in there. You throw the turmeric in there, you have all the beneficial effects of turmeric for heart and brain and prevention of all kinds of things and metabolism. It's awesome. And that's why I drink that smoothie literally every day. And I don't even know how many years I've been doing that. It must be close to 20. It's got to be close to 20. Yeah, I think it's getting close to 20. So anyway, apparently I haven't yet had enough bananas because I'm still drinking them every day. So anyway, I want to thank David Zhu for that article on Epoch Health. That's a premium article. You may not be able to access it unless you have a subscription there. That's why I read it for you. Oh, I forgot to tell you, I also put cacao powder in the smoothie. Oh yeah, man, that's true joy right there. You get the theobromine from cacao and all the other special alkaloids and things that are in there, and you're like, this is awesome. Let's have more smoothie. Okay, the other thing I wanted to get to was talking about pensions. So, I know you know this, but we all need to be reminded, I think, that as these banks fail, pensions will fail. And it's corporate pensions, there's also government pensions. But even for the pensions that don't fail, they will not keep up with inflation in terms of, the annual increases of their payouts, because they go off the government's official inflation numbers, which are what, like 6% now or something? When in reality, real inflation is over 20% in the United States, over 30% in the UK right now. So even if you get your pension payout, those dollars will be worth less and less and less. And I urge people not to panic, but take steps now to preserve your assets, right? Get them into things that don't erode in value. Of course, I'm not going to go through the list right now, but you know what the list is. But think about this. Your pension will buy you less and less and less. And I know there are plenty of retired people listening to this as well, and you're living on a pension. Well, start planning now for that pension to become smaller and smaller in terms of its purchasing power each month. So think about other ways. How can you cut costs of living? How can you be more efficient in your choices? How can you have other sources of revenue, for example, that even a small amount of income can supplement a shrinking pension? But as the banks crater, even if they have bailouts, especially if they have bailouts, your pensions are going to become increasingly worthless because, of course, inflation. So yeah, some people get $100,000 a year in a pension. There are people who get even more in California. But let's say you get $100,000 a year, or let's say you get $10,000 a month in a pension. Right now, that seems like a pretty decent chunk of money, but 2 years from now, what's that going to buy you? Given where we're headed in terms of inflation and hyperinflation, not much. See, that's the deal. It won't buy much at that time. I hear people from time to time, by the way, say, "No, you're wrong. I heard there's going to be deflation, man, not inflation, deflation." And I'm thinking, yeah, the value of your dollars are going to deflate or erode, go down. But you're going to have inflation in the prices of the things, the goods and services that you purchase. So people wonder, how can you have inflation and deflation at the same time? Inflation just means certain things are going up, like prices of food, and deflation just means certain things are going down, like value of the dollar. Sure, of course you can have deflation and inflation at the same time. In fact, they always go together. If food prices are inflating, the value of your dollar is deflating. It's that simple. They're always going to happen together. All right. Well, those are the things I wanted to cover offline or out of the studio. And now I'm going to throw back to, I think, the intro to the Gregory Mannarino interview and then the full interview with Gregory Mannarino. You won't want to miss this. Here we go.
All right, folks, get ready. I just finished recording the interview with Gregory Mannarino, and it was awesome. This guy knows his stuff, and he doesn't mind me asking hard-hitting questions, which I did. And you're going to learn a lot. And the situation with the banking system is, it's worse than I even feared. So here we go. Enjoy this interview with Gregory Mannarino from traderschoice.net. I'll be back on the other side with additional information in today's broadcast. Here we go. Gregory Mannarino, straight ahead. All right, welcome to today's interview with Gregory Mannarino, the perfect guy to join us to talk about what's going on because, of course, Gregory Mannarino at traderschoice.net has accurately predicted almost exactly the scenario that we are experiencing right now that people said could never happen, and now here it is. So, Gregory Mannarino, it's great to see you again. Thank you for joining me. Welcome to the show.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me, and we should do this more often.
You are invited here as often as you want to be here. Let me tell you, because you're nailing it every time. You're giving people practical advice. You give away so much for free that other people charge for. Frankly, it's just astonishing. And you're just people like you, man. You're one of us. You're not like part of the elite party. You're one of us. So.
You just got to be real. That's the whole thing. Just be real. I come out here, as you well know, and I give it to people real hard and straight. And if a lot of people can't handle it, but look, that's me. I don't connect with everyone, but I'm just out here trying to just put this whole thing into perspective. And it's just look for the most likely outcomes. That's all I do. I look at the situation. I'm a macro guy. And then I say, okay, what is the most likely things to happen? And, not right all the time, but for the most part, we're doing okay.
Yeah, you are doing okay. Better than okay. Let's start with, well, actually, let me ask you a crypto bank related question, because one of the patterns that has emerged here that's a little scary for some people is that 2 out of the 3 banks that failed in the US last week were, I think, the 2 strongest kind of crypto conversion banks, Silvergate and Signature out of New York. And then we saw the DOJ now has indicted Miles Guo for what they claim is his $1 billion H-coin scheme. Maybe it's a political hit job because this guy's linked to Steve Bannon. What do you think, just to jump into this, about the crypto aspects of the banks that are that are failing or being taken down? What do you think's happening?
It is very interesting, and there's a lot of talk out here, as you probably are well aware of, that this is, a way they're targeting cryptocurrency. I'll tell you something. I don't know about that. I'd have to say, look, what we're witnessing here, this was bound to happen if they had crypto exposure or no crypto exposure here.
True.
We have a system that is completely illiquid. Henceforth, why the Federal Reserve and now the Swiss National Bank have promised to, add liquidity to the system. It's drying up here. So, and where would it start? It's of course going to start with the smaller banks, and then it's going to bleed out into the bigger institutions. No one's immune to this. People believe, or I think, are being lulled into a sense that these larger institutions are safe. And I got a big surprise for everyone. How about no at all? These institutions are in the same boat here. Roughly 8 months ago, I kind of said, hey, there's a situation here that's unfolding. No deposits, no loans, no deals, an economy that's fallen off of a cliff. What's the most likely outcome? Well, we're going to start to see this really get rolling. And I said the banks are in trouble. As a matter of fact, I said, no, the people are in trouble because there's going to be another bailout. That's what's happening right now. The Federal Reserve can call this whatever they want to. And so can the Swiss National Bank. They can say, hey, we're adding liquidity. They did the same thing during the last meltdown. They added liquidity to the system, capital injections. Right. It's the same thing. All right. There's no difference here, but they just can't call it a bailout, or they may use other terms, but that's what it is. So with regard to the exposure of crypto, look, I know that people will see how it plays out, but I think we're going to see more of these institutions fail. And we're probably going to see some larger institutions fail. I think this is really a consolidation of the banking system as they're getting to roll out their new system, which I've been warning people about for, 10 years. That's coming. They already have it. They just need to roll it out. We just found out that the Federal Reserve, as a matter of fact, just rolled out their new instant
Fed now
transaction, whatever it is. It's instantaneous. Yeah. So, I mean, come on, man. I mean, look, it's everywhere. If people can't see where we're going, I mean, they're completely blind.
Yeah, completely agree. And by the way, just a reminder to our listeners here, your website, Greg, is traderschoice.net. Here it is, the Robin Hood of Wall Street, Gregory Mannarino, everything you need to rip this market's face off for free. Love it. And I forgot to introduce myself to anybody new. I'm Mike Adams, of course, the founder of Brighteon.com here, free speech platform. And Gregory Mannarino is also featured in our multi-part documentary series called Breaking Point. And thank you, Greg, for offering us video for that. And we put out the economic collapse episode like 2 weeks ago. You recorded it last year, I think August or September, but it sounded like you were talking about current events because you were so far ahead of what was actually happening. Wow. I mean, you were right on the money. You nailed it.
Well, look, people like you and I, and people that follow this. It's easy. I mean, like I was saying earlier, look, we know who the enemy is. In my view, who do I hate more than anyone else on this planet? I hate the central banks. I think these organizations are public enemy number one. They have a goal in mind that is to consolidate power around the world. Right now, they are the government of the world. They're pulling the strings. They control the flow of information. And they're the ones that have, they run the economy. They run the financial system, including the markets and everything else. So, they're the ones, they're the puppet masters. And I can't stand what they're doing. They're going out of the way to deliberately destroy the global economy by crushing the consumer, lying to the people, trying to say, okay, we're going to raise rates and that's going to control inflation. Well, that didn't work out too well. And big surprise here, no one that follows my work, but everyone knew this wouldn't work since day one. I was laughing. I was like, this ain't going to work. They could raise rates all they want. It's not going to do nothing. All right. All they're going to do is hurt the consumer, hurt the economy. And that's part of the mechanism here while we're seeing this systemic failure. We're in a systemic meltdown. That was the title of a couple of my videos just prior to the SVC bank going down. I mean, come on. And I'm telling people right here and right now on your lovely show, we ain't seen nothing yet. Nothing. Wait till what's coming down the pike. I'm telling you, just be ready for anything.
Well, in fact, I want to ask you about Credit Suisse. And guys, if you could show my screen to Gregory here. This is UK Daily Mail. Treasury probes U.S. banks' exposure to Credit Suisse as it pleads for help from Swiss State Bank. Now, we've seen the Swiss State Bank say they're going to inject liquidity. But my question to you, Greg, is why is the U.S. Treasury so concerned about U.S. bank exposure to this? After, by the way, I think Moody's just issued an alert 2 days ago saying that the entire U.S. banking system is incredibly fragile. They didn't.
It's downgraded to negative.
Yeah, exactly. So how much, what's going to happen if Credit Suisse goes down? What's going to happen in the U.S.?
Well, look, here's the situation. And I started off with this. I want people to understand that the entire banking system, all of it, it's interconnected like a gigantic web, and they all have exposure to each other in many different ways, and they're all taking on risks that they shouldn't be. Imagine anyone's surprise here. They never fixed a damn thing from the last meltdown. The assets on banks' book, they didn't clean up anything. They just maybe renamed it and made it look a little prettier. But the risk is all still there. The risk in the entire system. Well, first of all, the whole system it doesn't exist. It's not real. It's not on the elemental chart here. 99% of it, 99% of this is all derivatives, and derivatives are literally just side bets in cyberspace that have no bearing on reality whatsoever. And where this is going, no one even knows. But every single bank, I don't care where they are on the entire planet, has exposure to all of this other stuff that's on the other banks' books. Okay, no one is immune to this. This is why when we started this this interview here, I had said that the big banks aren't immune. I know this is what are people doing? Exactly what we expected them to do. They're basically running on these smaller banks, pulling their cash out and depositing this into the mega banks, who are in just the same boat. They just got more cash here, and more than likely this is going to consolidate too. We are going to see, mark my words on this, we are going to see several major banks go down or get absorbed in some kind of fashion, just like they did with Bear Stearns, okay, into and Washington Mutual. That was another one that went down too. People forget that got absorbed by JP Morgan. Okay, that's exactly what's going to happen here as well.
So, it's interesting you say that, because I'm doing the opposite. I'm taking money out of the big banks and moving them to small regional banks. And then, of course, moving it into things like gold and silver, right? And I talked to several gold retailers over the last couple of days. In fact, one gold wholesaler. They said that Monday was the biggest retail sales day they've ever had in 40 years of history. Okay. So people, blowing their phones up like crazy. And people, they told me one phone call, like a guy said, I want to put $100,000 into gold, and they locked it in, and he was about to hang up. Okay. Thanks for your order. And then he says, make it 200. So, that's the kind of thing that's going on out there. What do you think's going on in people's minds right now?
Well, there's no doubt that we're going to see this here. As the current system comes apart, people are going to look for alternative places to put their cash. It's just, that's another thing I've been telling people for the longest time. We are going to get a meltdown in the debt market. It's going to happen. Right now, there's an enormous effort to keep the debt market liquefied. Okay, it's already completely illiquid and extremely unstable. And we can see this just by watching the action in the global debt market, which is supposed to be rock solid. You're not supposed to see all these gyrations, for example, in the 10-year yield or the US dollar on a relative strength basis. This is not normal. So we have every sign you could think about. It's in our face. You just got to know where to look, that the debt market is on the edge of a full-on implosion, which is going to occur. I've never deviated from this in over 10 years. I've explained to people that we're going to get a meltdown there in the debt market. Yields are going to spike in an uncontrolled fashion. You're going to see cash bleeding out of the debt market, bleeding out of the stock market. It's going to look for alternative places. I think it's going to go into massively suppressed assets. Silver is my favorite of all time, gold, platinum, palladium, and I also believe it's going to make its way into some cryptocurrencies. And we can see this happening just over the last couple of days.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's already happening. So, I'm not surprised. People are going to say, hold on a minute now. We've been told for so long that gold is not real money. Meanwhile, we all know it is. When a central banker like Ben Bernanke tells you that it's not real money and banks only hold it for tradition, you know that you should be doing the polar opposite. Look, everybody that I know that has a few dollars laying around doesn't have a few dollars laying around. They're investing this more than likely in gold and silver and other assets. They're not just sitting in cash. I think people need to have a minimal exposure to cash. I really, really do. And you got to be invested in other things, in my opinion. What's happening here, what central banks are doing to the currency, sucking the purchasing power of it out, henceforth why we're getting all this inflation around the world. That's the issue. And I think this is going to become magnified much greater. Again, when all these liquidity injections, this is massively inflationary, but no one's talking about that. You can't just inject cash into the system and there not be a ripple effect. The ripple effect is going to be more inflation. And the Fed, they never wanted to stop inflation here. All they want to do is inflate. You see, people were sold a lie from day one here that the Fed had any slight inkling that they wanted to control inflation. All they want to do is inflate. Every central bank, their power exists in one thing, and that is their ability to inflate. And they're going to continue to find reasons to pull cash into the now. For example, reliquify an illiquid system, fund wars, and everything else you could dream about, and things you can't even think about.
Well, and you're right. This is going to ripple through the system, and it will be seen in grocery prices, in fuel prices, in everything. It's going to, I love how they said on Sunday night, Janet Yellen, like, oh, this is a non-bailout bailout, and no one has to pay for it. And I'm thinking, are you talking to us like we're 3 years old? Give me a break. And by the way, back on crypto, I think that the events that just happened are really, really strong for the role of crypto as a safe haven against the banking system. Because, the argument about crypto especially since Bitcoin was at a high of like 65 or something, and now it's in the low 20s. The argument was, well, the volatility is so bad. Well, hey, what about the volatility in Silicon Valley Bank? They should call it Silicon Volatility Bank, because your deposits went from 100% to zero on Saturday. And then they went back maybe to 100, but no one's sure yet because they're still working out. Talk about volatility. I mean, Bitcoin didn't go to zero over the weekend, but your deposits went to zero. People freaked. So, take a look.
Well, that's interesting that you bring that up. Look at what happened to some of the regional banks that are getting Federal Reserve backed loans. The day that it was the next day, we saw a couple of these banks, go up by 50%, but we're not allowed. See, this is incredible. Many regional banks, smaller banks are getting Federal Reserve backed loans, but we are not allowed to know who they are. But we can tell who they are by how they're getting bid up on Wall Street yet again. And you're trying to tell me no one's making money off of that? There's no insider trading going on? Nonsense. Okay, but anyway, you're totally right. Look, with regard to cryptocurrencies, people, they have these fantasies that it's going to go to zero, whatever it might be. And, for all we know, maybe it could, but I sincerely doubt it. I think these things are here to stay, honestly. With Bitcoin, the volatility, people who just don't understand it, it's a new asset class. And that's another reason why you see massive swings in cryptocurrencies. Generally when there's it's new compared to a lot of other things that have been around. So they become more stable. People don't know what to do with it. But the other issue with cryptocurrency that bothers me a lot, I would say, although I am an advocate of it, is Wall Street getting their ugly hands on it. So, But again, I still believe my scenario is going to play out exactly like I have said for a decade. Meltdown of the debt market, cash bleeds out of the debt market, puts pressure on the stock market, cash just moves. It doesn't grow money wings and fly away into money heaven. It's going to go into commodities, and in my view, it's going to go into the big cryptocurrencies as well, period. I can't imagine another way. People are going to seek alternatives, and that's what they're going to do. And, if I had to choose one asset to own, I'm going to tell you right now, you probably know what I'm going to tell you. It's this one.
Yep.
Right here.
Exactly.
Silver remains my favorite asset of all time. I think I urge people to just do the slightest bit of homework on this. Why does Greg always say that? It's very simple. I look at a couple of metrics. The Dow gold ratio, gold silver ratio. The Dow Jones Industrial Average right now, or the stock market, all of it is so massively overvalued at this particular point. It's in a hyper bubble. Where is the bottom of, let's say, the Dow Jones Industrial Average? No one knows. It's probably lower than 6,000. Why would I say that? Well, because that's where the Fed stepped in and started buying everything the last time we melted. We don't know where the bottom is. But I can tell you this. I believe from my research and just trying to get my head around this entire thing, well, you're going to see at least a 1-to-1 ratio gold Dow. So Dow 6,000 means 6,000 gold at a minimum. It could go 2-to-1 favoring gold. That's what I believe is going to happen when this whole thing melts down.
Wow.
So, I mean, you could just do the math, figure out. And I also think the gold silver ratio could go to 10-to-1. We'll see. We'll see how it plays out. But these have been my calls for like a decade, and I think it's going to play out that way. I really do.
Well, yeah, and what we're seeing right now is the playing out of a lot of things that you called for or called out over the last couple of years, problems with the banking system. Let me bring your attention to this other article from the Daily Mail that, according to a published study, assets of U.S. banks are worth actually $2 trillion less than their accounts report. So you may recall that officially, I think the FDIC said it was only a 650 billion. I say only 650 billion deficit. And you know what we're talking about. But just for our audience, this is the fact that the long-term bonds and the mortgage bonds that are being held by the banks are they have unrealized losses. Okay, and this is what happened at Silicon Valley Bank. So they have low yields, like 1.56% yields on a 10-year bond. I mean, give me a break. So they're losing money right now. Well, across the board, according to this new study, there's $2 trillion that is an unrealized loss in the banks right now. And the entire US commercial banking system, as I understand it, has less than 10 trillion in deposits. So we're talking about 20, maybe 25% of the money that people think they have deposited does not exist in the banks. What do you think that means for us, Greg?
Well, I mean, first of all, what you're referring to could actually, again, be called toxic assets. Does anyone remember those terms? You know, it was the real estate at that point here, mortgage-backed securities at that time.
Right.
Well, this is the equivalent of toxic assets. Okay. And again, what are they going to do? They're going to let this all just go up in smoke. There's going to be, again, more liquidity, more bailouts, of course. This is a major problem. This is a major problem. And I think once this really starts to come to light, we're going to see things that we can't believe. Again, moving forward here with regard to the now toxic assets that are being held on the bank's books, just as you just referred to here. It's an incredible thing that you have that anyone would put cash to work in an investment that's paying multiples less than the rate of inflation. You got to be nuts. Well, I can't. You know,
I know.
I can't believe this stuff. But look, it's just part of the insanity that we're seeing here. And just wait until, believe me, Credit Suisse and all of these banks have all this toxic stuff on their books, and they're not going to let us know about it, or maybe they will. I don't know, but they're going to play this. All I can say is this: watch what's going to happen to the banking system. It's going to consolidate, and that's all this is a massive consolidation and bailouts and more liquidity and rescues and whatever else they're going to tell us it is. And inflation is going to continue to surge higher.
Yeah, we're going to end up with like 3 mega banks, all funded by the Federal Reserve, massive money printing, and no functioning market system whatsoever. But think about this, folks. The Fed is still committed to raising rates in March, as well as at least 3 more times before the summer, probably 25 basis points each time. Who knows? We can ask Greg what your opinion is.
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
Yeah, but this $2 trillion deficit that I just mentioned in that article, that's going to go to 3 trillion and 4 trillion. Every time the Fed raises rates, there are more unrealized losses in the long-term bonds that are held at low yields by these banks using depositors' money. I mean, this number is going to skyrocket. Your thoughts?
You see, it's really good that you brought this up here, because people have no idea, again, of how the system works. And there's no way that the Federal Reserve itself is not aware of this. They know what's going on. Like, for example, did the banking regulators really miss what's going on here with these regional banks and SVB? Of course they didn't miss it. They knew this was going to happen, just like you and I did. And we're going to see this whole thing get a lot worse. They're going to turn a blind eye. There'll be no accountability. Absolutely. With regard to rate hikes, I've been pretty darn good at this. If you look back on my record, I think I've been wrong 3 times in 10 years with regard to what the Fed would do. I believe we're going to get a rate hike next week. As a matter of fact, next week to the day from the time we're doing this, we're going to get a rate hike. It's going to be 25 basis points. I think the Fed's going to change their language. They're not going to sound as bully or bossy. They're going to get a little timid here. Are we going to get a rate hike after that? I think we might get a pause first. At the end of last year, I said I believed that we would get a pause early in the year. And this kind of fits right into that. I think we're going to get a pause after the next 25. People can't really be that dumb, honestly, that we've had this institution and others raising rates and raising rates and raising rates. And they're all feeling the pinch of it. Meanwhile, inflation continues to rise. I guess they just don't get it. They don't know what's really going on here. But that's an amazing point that you brought up. And these are toxic assets. And this is people's cash that's working in these so-called toxic. Let's see where it goes. I can tell you it's going to be interesting. It really, really is. But we're going to see, again, a lot more trouble in the banking system moving forward. It's not over. It's just beginning.
It brings up the term, I know you're familiar with this, zombie banks. So, zombie companies.
The whole system is zombified,
it is,
man.
It's a zombie system. So, but just for our viewers, what that means is, of course, the banks are not solvent themselves, or the companies, if it's a zombie corporation, that it's not solvent itself. It has to be always funded with liquidity injections from outside. And so, it doesn't have its own life, hence the zombie metaphor. But it seems like we're going to end up in a position here very soon, or maybe we're already there with just a few major banks that are all zombified. None of them are solvent. It's just massive money printing, propping up everything. And we're all supposed to believe that your money's safe as long as you don't want it out, right? Like, don't take it out. That's dangerous. Keep it in. Then it's safe. What? This is what we're being told.
The whole system is zombified. The whole system itself is zombified. I mean, the debt-based economic model demands that it's zombified. We can't function ever in a state of true liquidity. It can never be enough. No matter how much they try to pump into it, it can never ever be enough because it's constantly going up and up and up and up, becoming more illiquid and more illiquid and more illiquid. The Fed, the Swiss National Bank, they can pump whatever they want into the system. It will not be enough. What we're hitting now is something I've warned about, I don't know how many years ago, a point of maximum saturation. That's the exact word I've used. It's something I just came up with on my own because it just feels right for me to say that. What does this mean? It means that when the system becomes so overloaded with toxic assets and debt that we start to see inflation creep up, creep up, creep up, creep up, creep up. Part of this moment of maximum saturation here is now bank failures, okay? Yeah. And it's systemic failure. It's not just the banks, okay? We have a global economy that is failing by design, at least in my opinion, as central banks drive it into the ground because they got to kill the current system. They got to kill the current system to issue in their new system of maximum control. Right. And that's coming. Completely digital, completely fiat. And of course, don't be surprised when you see this World War III, in my view, which has already begun, expand and get larger and larger. And then they're going to use the war as a scapegoat. Oh, it's the war. Oh, yes. The war. Blame the war. Blame this nation. Blame that nation. Blame the war. It's not the central banks. It's not your illustrious leadership. Oh, they're all fantastic. It's the war. They're setting up the scapegoat. They already have it. They're just waiting for. What they're going to do is they're going to allow a false flag event to occur here, in my view. So and the only reason why I can say that with a high degree of certainty is because this is what they always do over and over and over. They don't change. Their MO works, so that they're going to reuse it again. And that bothers me because that means people are going to die. Many, many people are going to die.
Yeah, I said they're warming up the squadron of black swans and strapping explosive vests on them right now to see where they can put them. Now, just in wrapping this up, Greg, I mean, this has been amazing, and we really welcome you to join us again soon. But tell people what they can find at your website, traderschoice.net. What is it that, you have a newsletter and everything? Tell people about it, please.
Well, yeah, look, what I'm trying to do is create a community here. Okay. I don't want this. And I tell people, this is not my YouTube blog isn't just my thing. This is a global. I feel like it's a big family here. I have this MMRI chart, the Manarino Market Risk Indicator, which tells people in real time the current risk in the market here. You can see we're clearly in a high risk zone if you look at the color zone. I have a free newsletter, absolutely right there. I want people to subscribe to that here. I got like 70,000 people in there. They interact with each other. I have a chat room on this page. If you go down further, there's a chat room there. Right there. You got to click on that. It'll let you in. Okay. Anyway, it's free. It's free as well. I want people to take advantage of these things. I want people to connect with like-minded people. It's what we got to do. Every Friday, I leave people up with 3 things: love each other, care about each other, and be charitable. We must embrace this, and we could change the freaking world regardless of whatever they're going to do to us. And we haven't seen anything yet, honestly. I'm really happy that I was on your show here today. We got to talk about some incredible things. Oh, yeah. And people just need to start paying attention, start raising their awareness. Take this show here, your show, spread it around. Let people hear what's going on, because they're not going to find this anywhere else. Anyway, you want to turn on Bloomberg, Fox Business, CNBC? No way.
Jim Cramer special. Before I let you go, Gregory, you love dogs too, right?
Oh, I love dogs. They're my favorite things on this earth.
All right. So you haven't met my new dog that's in the studio here.
Oh no,
Rhodey, come on up, Rhodey. Come on, here he is. Rhodey, say hi to Greg. Say hi to Gregory. Hey, how you doing, buddy? You want to say hello? It's Manarino.
What a great dog.
It's Manarino. Yes. He's he loves it here in the studio. He does security, and some commentary from time to time on various things.
That's awesome. That's great.
But yeah, we just got to show the human side too. You know, we love animals too. We love humanity. We want to keep humanity. We want to end human suffering and live in a sense of freedom and prosperity. And all the tools are out there. You know that, Greg. You talk about it too. But it's been taken from us by the system on purpose.
By design. That's what it's all designed to do. It's very sad. Very, very sad. But, you know, look, we're aware. We're making people aware. Hopefully they're understanding what's going on. And knowledge is power. Knowledge is power. And I mean, I wish we could have a revolution. I really do. But we're not going to have one, unfortunately. People need to, we got to get rid of these central banks. They are the core. They're the enemy. Public enemy number one. If we can get rid of these institutions who are literally out to destroy the world right now. It sounds like science fiction, but it's true. We would all be better off without central banks.
Yeah. Well said. Thank you, Gregory, and really appreciate your time. Have a great day. And for those of you watching, of course, Gregory Mannarino at traderschoice.net. Feel free to repost this interview anywhere you'd like. I'm Mike Adams, the founder of Brighteon.com. You have our permission to go ahead and post it, and just give a link over to Mannarino at traderschoice.net. Thank you for watching today. I'm Mike Adams, Brighteon.com, and you've been watching an interview with Gregory Mannarino. Everybody, get prepared. Take care. All right, folks, hope you enjoyed that interview with Gregory Mannarino. That guy's amazing, and we're going to invite him back on a more frequent basis because he knows his stuff. This is going to be the biggest financial crisis of our lives. Way bigger than 2008, bigger than Black Monday, 1987, bigger than the dot-com crash. There are going to be people who survive this and get out of the system, and then there are going to be people who are financially annihilated by what's coming, by the total banking collapse that has already been set into motion. And I'm sorry to say, the oblivious masses will be annihilated. We'll try to reach as many as we can. You know, we'll try to offer solutions. We'll try to bring people around to rationality of how to avert risk. And speaking of that, by the way, our sponsor for today, the Treasure Island Coins and Precious Metals Company, if you can even get through because their phone lines are so busy, just go to metalswithmike.com and you'll be forwarded to their website. They post their prices online. For example, you can go to products right here. You can look at gold coins. You can look at United States Mint coins, for example, and it'll bring up the actual coins and the actual prices from different mints. You can look at silver, everything in real time. Here's Royal Canadian Mint silver coins. There you go. And you can see the prices in real time. So you know they're giving you the most competitive prices and that they have inventory either on hand or incoming, readily available. They can get you gold and silver coins in your hands in an honest way, a competitive way, a trusted way. Believe me, if they did not treat people well, I would drop them as a sponsor. Trust me. If I got complaints about them, about anybody, I'd drop them as a sponsor. I don't get complaints about Treasure Island. I get happy people who said, thank you for connecting me to these folks because I got the gold and silver that I needed and they did a great job and they're professionals. So there you go. Metalswithmike.com. It's one option to consider. There are many options out there. Get yourself some professional financial advice, figure out what your goals are and figure out how to avert risk in the best way for you. It might be gold and silver. It might be land and real estate. It might be buying more garden seeds, or it might be buying T-bills. I don't know. Figure out what's right for you. Get on it because time is growing short. Again, metalswithmike.com, and we thank them for sponsoring this broadcast today. So that's a wrap here on the Situation Update broadcast from Brighteon.com. Quite a packed episode. A lot more coming up. We've got some amazing guests coming up even later this week. So check back with us here at Brighteon.com and other platforms. I'm Mike Adams, the publisher of naturalnews.com and the founder of Brighteon. And I'll talk with you again tomorrow. Take care.
A global reset is coming, and that's why I've recorded a new 9-hour audiobook. It's called The Global Reset Survival Guide. You can download it for free by subscribing to the naturalnews.com email newsletter, which is also free. I'll describe how the monetary system fails. I also cover emergency medicine and first aid and what to buy to help you avoid infections. So download this guide. It's free. It's my gift to you simply because I want like-minded people to survive.